Delta recently shared a story on Instagram that you could indicate all of the travel that you did in 2022 that made your year special. So if you follow me on Instagram, or if you follow Delta on Instagram because they reshared my story, you will have seen that I visited 23 destinations. My longest trip was 10 days. My favorite city that I visited was Barcelona, and the place that I want to revisit is France. But all of that reminded me that I wanted to look back in more depth on all of the travel that I did in 2022 and start planning my travel for 2023. If you've watched my channel for a while, you know that I prioritize traveling and it's one of my top goals. I don't really have a SMART goal for it. I don't measure this goal. I don't have a timetable or anything like that to make it a SMART goal. But I want to be intentional at the beginning of every year about traveling more and just making it a important part of my life. Now, I did make a video why I prioritize traveling. So if you want to check that out, I'll leave that in the description box below. But let's first look at where I predicted I was going to be traveling for 2022 in my video from last year. Planning for the travel in 2022. I like to keep a list on my notes section on my phone of places that I already know that I have plans to travel and some thoughts and ideas of future travel to maybe start thinking about and put into motion. So for January, I already have a trip to Gainesville, Florida planned to visit my grandma, so I have that already marked. And then in May, I'm going back to Kansas/Nebraska for graduation. And then in June, every year, like I had mentioned, my sister, her family, and I go to the beach. So we already have that pretty much planned out. We're gonna be going to Fort Walton Beach this time in Florida. And it will just be us. It won't be 16 of us, so that'll be a little bit smaller to plan. We pretty much already have that planned. So now that I have the planned trips already written down, I can see where I have some free space in my year that I can start thinking about possible future travel. So I have a couple of international trips that have been on the back burner for a while. So I have a trip to Portugal with my cousin Erin, a trip to Ireland with my cousin Jess, that we'll try to see if we can fit in 2022. So those are some possibilities. So let's dive deeper on where I actually ended up traveling for 2022. Like I mentioned, I went to Gainesville, Florida in January to visit my grandma. My sister Kelly, my aunts and uncle all went as well. And the main purpose was to clean out my grandma's garage. And if you've ever cleaned out a garage, particularly someone who's lived in that house for a number of years, you'll find the strangest things, and it was a busy weekend. So needless to say, I didn't do much vlogging like I wanted to on that trip. I spent a lot of quality time with my family, but also a lot of time working on cleaning out the garage. Now for February and March, I didn't do any traveling per se. Kelly and I have this goal to see as many of our favorite 90s country singers in concert as possible. So for March, we had a lot of concerts that we attended. We kind of call it our Concert-a-palooza, concert-pocalypse. I don't know, what do you want to name that? But we saw Tracy Lawrence and Clay Walker in concert in Huntsville, Alabama, and then spent an arm and a leg on tickets to see Morgan Wallen here in Nashville. Now, Morgan's not a 90s country singer, but it was a phenomenal concert. Almost made the price of the tickets worth it. I can't complain too much. I had it in my budget, but whew, if I could have spent less on those tickets, I would have. So March was spent attending some concerts. In April, I did a solo trip to Chattanooga, Tennessee, which was so much fun. Rode on some trains, tasted some whiskey, and did some hiking. Now, the weather did rain on my parade a little bit, and I didn't do all of the activities that I wanted to, but had a great time in Chattanooga nonetheless. In May, I had the Kansas-Nebraska trip planned, and that was for my nephew's high school graduation, my niece's 8th grade graduation, and one of my childhood friends' baby shower. So it was a jam-packed weekend of visiting friends and family. And it's kind of cheating to say Kansas and Nebraska because my hometown in Kansas is just like 15 miles south of the state line, and my oldest sister and my nephew and niece live across the state line in Nebraska, but I'm going to count that as two different destinations, two states in one weekend. cheating a little bit, but I'm gonna count it. In June, we had our annual beach trip. So my sister, her family, and myself go to the beach in the Alabama, Florida coast. We kind of switch off which particular beach we go to, but it's along that coastline. And in June, we went to Fort Walton Beach in Florida, and that was a lot of fun. Built sandcastles and just hung out with my nephews, snorkeling, looking at fish in the ocean. That was a lot of fun. At the end of July through the beginning of August, I did my Rome to Barcelona by train trip with the group travel company Kentucky. Now that trip came as a surprise to me. I was watching a video from the YouTuber Morgan Yates back in March where she talked about hosting this trip with Kentucky. And so I kind of researched it, took about 24 hours to think about it. The price was within my budget, so I booked that trip and never once regretted the decision. Met a lot of cool people, went to a lot of different destinations on that trip that I didn't even think of for the year, so it was so much fun. I am planning on doing a review video of Kentucky and that trip. So if you have any questions about group travel companies like Kentucky or that trip in particular, leave a comment down below so I can answer your questions when I make that video. Then in September, I did a girls trip to Myrtle Beach with my sister Kelly and my cousin Alexis. Alexis is like our younger sister, so we all have the same personality, and it was just nonstop laughter the entire weekend. We hung out at Myrtle Beach, did a day trip to Wilmington, North Carolina, did a wine tour, a sunset boat cruise. So much fun, perfect girls weekend. In October, I had a whirlwind week of travel. The first half of my week, Sunday through Wednesday, was a work trip to Portland, Oregon. I was going to a conference, and that one was actually planned months in advance. It wasn't until a couple of weeks before that trip where I decided I wanted to add on to that trip because that following weekend was my birthday weekend. So I was talking to my friend Philip, who lives in the DC area, and he's like, hey, why don't you come visit me? So I was like, I have some Southwest points, let's book it. So for Sunday through Wednesday, I went to Portland, Oregon, and like I said, had a conference. It was a lot of fun. The downtown area is a little sad with the high crime and the increase in homeless population. So that was a little damper on the trip, but I did go outside of the city to visit the Pittock Mansion, which was so cool to tour, and it sits up on a hill and you have this great view of the city that you look down upon. Really cool. Then Wednesday night, came back to Nashville, went to work the next day, and then Thursday night, flew out to DC for the weekend, celebrated my birthday, hung out with friends, went to the Arlington National Cemetery, which was super cool, and just had a great weekend. So October was a whirlwind week of going from the West Coast to the East Coast, many different time zones within that week, a little exhausting with all those time zones, but it was a lot of fun nonetheless. Then in November, I went back to Kansas for Thanksgiving. That was a little low-key trip, didn't do much vlogging, but had a great time hanging out with family, and my dad's birthday is around Thanksgiving, so celebrated his birthday and just had a great time in Kansas. Then in December, I went to my sister's in Alabama to celebrate the holidays, so had a great time hanging out with my nephews. We baked cookies, watched Christmas movies, and tried to keep warm because a cold front came through and it was 13 degrees Fahrenheit. In Alabama, it was so cold, oh my goodness. So, tried to stay warm. It is now warmed back up above freezing. I'm home again in Nashville, but man, those are some cold temperatures. So now that we recap 2022, let's look ahead at 2023 and what trips I already have planned. So similar to last year, I have 3 trips planned for 2023 already. In January, I'm going back to Gainesville, Florida to visit my grandma. In March, I'm so excited. I'm taking a trip to Germany to visit my cousin Madeline. Madeline and her family recently relocated to Germany a couple months ago for work. So I'm gonna visit her and her family and explore some areas of Germany. I'm so excited. I haven't been to Germany, but I have kind of traced my last name, Rockey. I've traced it back to the 1500s in Germany, so I have some ancestry in Germany. So that makes the trip a little bit more special as well. So I'm so excited about that trip. And then June, the annual beach trip with my sister and her family. However, this year is going to be another big family beach trip. So my dad and my older brother and sister and their kids are going to be coming down. We're going to be going to Orange Beach for our big family beach trip. So those are the 3 trips that I already have planned. Again, I'm going to leave the rest of my year open. I have tentative plans. Am I going to go to Boston, Arkansas? Those are some questions I have up in the air. And who knows, will I go to Portugal with my cousin Erin? Will that trip ever actually come to fruition? Who knows? Find out this year on my channel. That is what I have planned for 2023. Let me know in the comments down below, do you have a trip planned for 2023 that you're really excited about? Is there a place that I should add to my year for 2023? Let me know, and I'll see you in the next video. Happy New Year!